What's up guys, I'm Noah Cooper with Athletic Body Systems. Today we're talking about why your leg training sucks and how to fix it. Don't feel too bad because I'm going to talk about a lot of mistakes that aren't as common, and there's some things that I'm even guilty of in my own training. So let's go ahead and get into it. The biggest problem you see with people in their leg training is their squat form. Now squatting to me is a very simple and straightforward exercise. You're just putting a barbell on your back, you're squatting down and you're standing up. Pretty simple when you say it like that, but something I've noticed just from working with people and kind of helping my friends get into lifting and just observing beginners in the gym is that they really need a lot of work getting their squat form down. You kind of have to work with them step by step, and it really helps to work with them one-on-one. It's very difficult for beginners to grasp the squat form. I think a lot of times people are just kind of scared that they're going to do something wrong, or they just don't know all of the cues, and that's fine. It's just there's a lot of things to go through with a beginner to help them understand how to squat correctly. Stuff like bar position on their back, their stance width, keeping their back straight, bracing their core, things like that, which a lot of these are easily fixable. You just kind of explain it to them and then they can start adding weight to the bar. The problem is that if you can get those things down and start adding weight to the bar, your squat form can still really suck. The biggest problem you see with people squatting is their depth, or lack thereof. The infamous quarter squat. We see it in gyms around the world. People get nowhere near parallel, they load up a bunch of weights and they do a bunch of 0 reps and think that they're strong. What you need to do is you need to take some of that weight off and you need to practice getting down into a deep squat position. This is going to give you a much better quad stimulus. Your reps are actually going to count. You're not going to look stupid. And it's just going to be safer. You're going to practice getting your body stronger in those weaker positions, and you're not going to really run the risk of getting stapled to the floor because you picked a weight that's too heavy and you accidentally squatted down deeper than what you're used to. Now, some other mistakes that are not necessarily detrimental to progress, but it's just areas that anyone can improve upon, including myself, and that just comes down to controlling your eccentrics a little bit better, trying to stay more upright. A lot of people, and I'm guilty of this too, so don't feel too bad, they kind of want to drop down too quickly and kind of dive bomb down to the bottom so they can bounce out of the hole at the bottom of a squat. This isn't necessarily a horrible thing, it's just, it might not reinforce a very good movement pattern. I think it's going to benefit you a lot more to kind of control yourself on the way down, slow down that eccentric a little bit, not to like an arbitrary count or anything, like you don't have to count like 3 seconds down or whatever, but just slow down a little bit on the eccentric. I think this will just help you maintain a better posture and body position throughout the movement. Speaking of posture, I think it's pretty important that we talk about your body position, specifically your torso. I think you want to keep your torso as upright as possible. Now, a lot of us are built differently. Some of us have longer femurs than others, and that's okay. There's no textbook perfect way that you need to squat, but generally there's going to be guidelines in place and general rules that are going to apply to almost everybody. So I think for most people, everybody has a way of squatting that's going to keep your torso as upright as your body will allow, the bar on your back. This comes down to you just picking an appropriate weight that doesn't kind of force you to sit back because it's a little bit too heavy. You bracing your core properly and then slowing down that eccentric like we talked about. If you can keep your torso pretty upright and then not sit back too much, you can kind of push your knees forward over your toes. It's going to give you a killer quad stimulus. One last tip for squats is don't stand with a super wide stance. Unless you're a powerlifter and you're actually training for a powerlifting meet, most of us are gonna have a longer range of motion, and it's just gonna feel more natural if we take a more moderate, more narrow stance, maybe shoulder width or just outside of shoulder width. Now, let's talk about hip hinges. Hip hinges are an essential movement pattern. This includes things like deadlifts, Romanian deadlifts, hyperextensions. All of these are gonna help you build some massive hamstrings. You gotta learn how to do them correctly though. So a big misconception with hamstring training is that squats will build your hamstrings along with your quads and your glutes. This isn't actually true. Your hamstrings are really just more of a stabilizer in your squat. They're not really going to be taken anywhere near failure. It kind of serves the same function as the biceps during the bench press, you know what I mean? So that's why it's essential to do things like Romanian deadlifts so that you can really create a lot of tension and get that deep stretch in your hamstrings. If you haven't watched my Romanian deadlift tutorial, please go check it out. It's pretty solid. But a lot of mistakes people make with this is, number one, just not doing them. I think hamstrings tend to get neglected a lot by people in the gym. And when people do Romanian deadlifts, they tend to sandbag a little bit. Just because you're trying to feel the muscle and get that deep stretch doesn't mean that you need to use some baby weights on this. Here I am just doing 275 for I think 9 reps here. I'm trying to get this to where I can rep out 315 for like a set of 10. I think that's a pretty solid goal. I'm actually doing this from a deficit so I can get an even deeper stretch on my hamstrings. Yeah, this is not meant to be a super lightweight exercise here. You can still go pretty heavy and load up some weight, By that same token, don't make the mistake of loading up a bunch of weight and then just doing partial rep deadlifts, right? The conventional deadlift and Romanian deadlift are two different exercises. You need to learn how to distinguish the two. Again, check out that tutorial I made and try to get the form down so you can really target your hamstrings. Now we need to talk about the elephant in the room here. I've got some small calves. I've been wearing shorts a lot lately because it's warm outside, and I looked down one day on an arm day and I was just like, wow, I've got some really tiny calves and I've got to change that right away. I myself am very guilty about neglecting my calves in all my leg workouts. I just kind of overlook it and think it'll be fine, you know, I'll train them one day. But here lately I've really wanted to focus on calf training and make my calves bigger. You know, there's like memes about like calves are just genetic, they'll never grow or whatever. You know, I'm doing like 9 sets of calves a week right now. I'm doing 2 different exercises for the first time in my training career. I'm actually seeing a little bit of results now. And I think a lot of people make the mistake of treating calves like they're not really that important. They just kind of pick lightweight exercises. You can go pretty heavy with your calves. Now, generally, I recommend using a higher rep range, like 10 to 15, maybe even 20 reps. But if you're doing something like a seated calf raise, don't be afraid to load up some reps and like really push your calves. You don't just want to bounce and to just kind of go through the motions. Really try to get that squeeze on your calves. You can pick another exercise like I'm doing here. This is a leg press machine where I'm getting a really deep stretch on my calves. Push these hard, push your calves to failure, and you might be surprised at what you're capable of, and then your calves will actually start growing because you're training them very seriously for the first time in your training career. We've also got to talk about your programming. I'm a big believer in training frequency. Now, I don't think you have to train a muscle really more than twice a week, but I think if you do train a muscle twice a week, you have 2 leg days. That gives you 2 areas in 1 week for some more progressive overload, and it's going to give you a chance to practice your movement patterns a little bit more and kind of reinforce good movement patterns. So I'm a big believer in having a second squat pattern to throw in there. Lately I've been doing a lot of front squats, which can help you stay in a super upright position and target your quads really well. They're really challenging, but this is just another way to get in some more squat volume without having to just crush your legs once a week. I think it's a really good idea to kind of split your training up over a few days throughout the week instead of just throwing everything in at once. You're less likely to kind of sandbag and just kind of rush through it. I know for me personally, if I were training a muscle just once a week, especially legs, I would get tired and I wouldn't really take each exercise as seriously. It's also a really good idea to throw in some variations. Here I am doing some seated leg presses. This is a pretty challenging exercise. I find that I can push pretty hard on this, but it's not quite as fatiguing as a squat. I don't have to put as much thought into it. I can just slide this pin down into the stack. I don't even have to load weights onto it, but it lets me challenge my quads from a different angle and still get in some more quality training volume. Lastly, if we're going to talk about leg training, we've got to talk about cardio. Don't be a cardio skipper. If you're doing like some higher rep sets of squats, like sets of 10, you know, maybe 10 or 12, 15, and you're getting really, really winded and you feel like you're going to die, like you just run a marathon, you got to start doing some more cardio, because it really shouldn't be that difficult. And I think if you really practice doing some cardio at least once or twice a week, and maybe you start running on a treadmill or getting on an elliptical or something like that, I think you'll find that you'll be able to get through a leg workout without being so winded and so fatigued, and you're going to be able to kind of have a little bit more endurance and get through your leg workouts with a little bit more intensity. Alright guys, that's all I've got for you in today's video. It's been a while since I made a video, so I hope you guys have really liked this one. If you want to see more videos like this, as well as exercise tutorials and full workouts and things like that, please go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss out on the gains. Follow me on Instagram at Athletic Body Systems, and you guys have a great day. I'll see you in the next one.